This episode of Systematic Bass Fishing is brought to you in part by Top Tier Tackle, manufacturers of T3 fishing rods. Look for the new XT and Infinity rod series wherever fine tackle is sold starting in 2021. Come and take it. And by Koppel Outfitters, your home for adventure. If you live outdoors, Koppel Outfitters has you covered. Check out their entire line of outdoor wear by going to their website at koppeloutfitters.com. And don't forget to check out their Instagram at Koppel Outfitters. Go have an adventure. Hello everybody, welcome to Systematic Bass Fishing. This is a series that is going to help you learn to add a plan, a fixed plan to your fishing. What we want to be able to do is we want to be able to approach our fishing from a methodical standpoint. In other words, you think of a day fishing as an exercise in problem solving. Everybody has an idea of what they should be doing, but what happens if that doesn't work? In other words, let's say that plan A doesn't happen for you. What's plan B? What's plan C? What's plan D? We fail when we stop trying, but we don't want to go out there and just flail at it. We want to take our knowledge, what we understand about bass fishing, and we want to apply a systematic approach so that we're starting with what we think will work. We think it will work, it will work. However, it may not be exactly what we're talking about. It may be a retrieved change, it may be a color change, it may be a downsize of some kind. All right? But we want to understand what that is so that we're not just flailing about out there on the water. With each failure comes more self-doubt. With more self-doubt comes more failure. It just becomes a spiral down. You hear pros all the time talk about getting spun out. How can we avoid that? The answer is you probably can't avoid that all the time. But if you teach yourself to think systematically, if you teach yourself to think in terms of what is the variation from plan A, what is plan B? And if plan B is not working, what is plan C? And so on. You can begin to really train yourself to approach it from a good process. And that's what we really want to get at right here. All right, so lure companies almost never make one size of any bait. First of all, it would be bad business. If you can come up with multiple variations of the same bait, think about how many more you can sell. So from that standpoint, lure companies do that. But let's also think about size variances. In other words, one crankbait doesn't fit all the situations. So for example, and before I even talk about crankbaits, I need to ask myself, what do I think the fish are feeding on? Do I think the fish are feeding on crawdads? If I think the fish are feeding on crawdads, then I'm going to select a crawdad bait. Okay, this particular crawdad crankbait, this is a Demiki crankbait. It's in red like a crawdad would be, red and black. Very good, typical crawdad color. All right, so that's where I might start there. Do I think the bass are feeding on shad or some other kind of swimming, schooling bait fish? If that's the case, maybe I would choose a lighter, more shad-like color in that situation. Okay, all right. So starting with a color variation, and in my mind, my retrieve is going to vary with what I think I'm throwing. So, for example, I don't know about you, but I don't think crawdads swim in a constant pattern, along throughout the water column. I think that crawdads, because I've seen them in the water, they start and they stop. They start and they stop. So right there, if I think I'm fishing a crawdad pattern bait, crankbait in this case, I'm going to use a retrieve that's more start-stop oriented. Okay. Shad, on the other hand, also swim longer, but you know what? Shad are pretty erratic too, and they change directions and they start and stop and they get panicked. So I guess what I'm getting at here is the retrieve might be a little bit different in either one of these crankbaits, but I still want to make sure that I'm thinking about am I fishing, am I trying to target a crawdad, am I trying to target a shad or some other kind of bait fish? All right, so let's say that I've decided that the fish are feeding on crawdads, okay? And I'm starting with this is a DC 400 model. It's a deep diving crankbait. It's got a big bill on it, and I'm anticipating that that I'm going to be throwing this in water that's I would say between 12 and 15 feet. Okay, I want to be able to maintain contact with the bottom, so I'm thinking 12 to 15 feet here. All right. So I'm out there, I'm fishing it. I feel like the fish should be biting it, and yet they're not. Well, what's my next move? What do I do? Well, you were correct in throwing that crankbait because whatever the conditions were, that's what you believed in. And so what you probably should do, or what you should do is go to a step down. All right, here's that same crankbait in a shallower diving model. I don't know how well you can see that, but it's the same color, same crankbait. You thought they were eating crawdads, so it's the same crawdad color, but it's got a this is a square bill actually, so it's going to dive shallower. It's going to reach a shallower depth. Maybe you're going to move from that 12 to 15 foot range. Maybe you're going to move up into that 7-8 foot range, and maybe that's going to work for you. But the point is, you need to have an approach to this. All right. You thought that the fish would be eating crankbaits. You're right. They will be eating crankbaits. They may not be eating plan A. What's plan B? Okay, plan B might be going to the shallower diving model. Okay, what's plan C? Well, plan C might be switching from a crawdad color over to a shad color. One of the things that's important for us to realize is that most lure companies, most crankbait companies, are going to have 2, 3, maybe even 4 different depth ranges that they cover with their crankbaits, and that's very helpful. In that same scenario with the crawdad color, I actually left out one of the things I should try. This is a lipless crankbait. Okay, this one just sinks. I could fish this in any depth. So if I thought that maybe the fish had moved out to deeper water, maybe I felt like they should be out, maybe they're not in 15 feet, maybe I think they're out in 20, 25 feet, I could throw this lipless crankbait out there and I could work it. I would probably use this as more of like a pumping action where I would let it go to the bottom and pop it up off the bottom, but it's the same kind of a thing. It's still a crankbait and it's still within that systematic approach. So I start with a deep diver. I can move shallow. I can move deeper if I feel like that's the way to go. Now, obviously, we're not going to be throwing only crankbaits all day. We might have a jig tied on. All right. This is a flirt skirt jig. It's a 1/2 ounce jig, and you know what? This is probably the right bait. I'm sure I can find a jig bite in the lake if I have the right conditions, if I have the right situation. I'm sure I can find a jig bite. But here's the thing. Notice it's in the same color pattern. I feel like they're eating crawdads, so it's in that same red and black color pattern. But here's the thing. I get out there and I throw it for a while, and I'm not getting bit. Maybe I see fish on the meter. I don't know why I'm not getting bit. I should be getting bit. Well, the jig decision was a good decision, but maybe it's a different size. So most jig companies will make a 1/2 ounce, they'll make a 3/4, they'll make a 1/4, and they'll also go to 3/4, maybe even 1 ounce. So maybe the 1/2 ounce is falling too fast for these fish. Maybe the 1/2 ounce is too much water displacement, and the fish are not in a really aggressive mode. I think starting with a 1/2 ounce is a great way to do it, because if the fish are aggressive, they're going to pick up on the water displacement and they're going to come right to where the bait is. The bigger jig displaces more water, creates more commotion, and it's going to pull those active fish to you. But if they're not super active, maybe going down a 3/4 ounce. I'm sorry, a 3/8 ounce, maybe a 1/4 ounce. that might be the ticket in this situation. And you know what? In really getting into a radical situation, if you think about what a Ned rig does, a Ned rig does just about the same exact thing that the jig does, except a Ned rig is super subtle, and that would be a good way to approach it. So, I mean, I might even add a Ned rig into my systematic approach to fishing a jig. All right. But plastic worms. I mean, we have so many different plastic worm presentations. Is it a drop shot? Is it a Texas rig? Is it a Carolina rig? So many. Is it a Nico rig? So many different plastic worm approaches that we can use. We'll talk about how to get into that system in upcoming episodes of systematic bass fishing. Swim baits. Okay, I mean, swim bait companies. Swim bait companies make multiple sizes. Here's a Trophy Bass Baits DFT, dumb fat trout. It's a paddle kind of. It's not really a paddle. It's more of a swimming swim bait. And this is a 9.5 inch version of this. But you're out there, you're throwing it, you're getting nothing. You feel like, you know, today I should be getting a swim bait. I should be getting swim bait bites, and it's not happening. Well, maybe you need to downsize. Here's the same bait in a 6.5 inch size. And again, lure companies make variations in the baits so that we can take the systematic approach. Okay, spinnerbait would be the same way. I can recall that one of the biggest fish I ever caught was a close to 10-pound bass at Clear Lake. I'd been throwing a half-ounce spinnerbait all day, and just hadn't had much going on. But you know, up at Silver Lake, they have these silverside. They have some of these these bait fish that have that are much smaller, and so I decided to tie on a 1/4 ounce spinnerbait and make some casts. And sure enough, off the end of a dock, there was that big fish waiting. Would he have hit the heavier spinnerbait? Maybe, but you know what? No other fish were. I just was not getting anything on a half-ounce spinnerbait. So I decided to downsize to the 1/4 ounce, and got it paid off. Big fish. Wish that fish had been during the tournament, not during the practice. But there you go. That's just an indication as to what we're looking at in the systematic bass fishing segments that we'll be having in the future. Okay. The idea is you go into this with background knowledge. Everybody has background knowledge. You know, your own fishing, your own experience, or, you know, if you're like me, you watch a lot of YouTube, you see things there. You see a lot of things on TV shows. All of this goes into your background knowledge. And so when you see something, when you see a set of conditions, your mind tells you that's what I should be fishing. And you know what? You are right. I want to make sure you understand it. You're right. If you think it's crankbait water, it's crankbait water. It may not be that crankbait that you have tied on, but it's going to be crankbait water. Why? Because you've seen it happen before. You've seen other people catch fish on TV or YouTube. You've caught them yourself, so it's going to happen. It just might not be that particular crankbait. Okay? We want to develop a systematic approach. What we want to do is we want to eliminate the self-doubt. You know, I go out and I throw something for 20 minutes. It's not working, and I just, you know, I start to doubt myself. I pick up a different bait or whatever, and you know, maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. But you know, failure after failure after failure, you really start to doubt yourself. What I want you to do is I want you to start trusting yourself. You thought it was crankbait water, so it is crankbait water. Now let's zero in on which crankbait. Okay, don't just give up after 20 minutes. You know, let's work through the sizes that we were talking about. Okay, speaking of conditions, what are the conditions? You know, we all have kind of a preconceived idea of what should happen in various conditions. Bright, clear skies, overcast, wind, rain. You know, you're right. You're right. You've caught fish in different situations. In these situations, that should be where you start. That should be where you start. What has your experience been with cover? How do you approach rocks? How do you approach rocks with brush? How do you approach brush with just, sand or kind of a clay bank? How do you approach grass? Well, we all kind of have these ideas in our head, and they are correct ideas. What you approach them with, though, might need to be changed. Okay, I see wind and I see grass, and my mind tells me half-ounce spinnerbait or spinnerbait. So I start throwing that half ounce out there, and I'm throwing it, and I'm not getting bit. And you know what? I should be. What's my move? Maybe I'm going to downsize to a 3/8 or a quarter. Okay, but I'm going to have plan A, plan B, plan C, hopefully plan D ready to go, because I got to trust my understanding of conditions. Okay, and cover associated with those conditions. The difference between a good day fishing and getting skunked can be a small margin. This series is designed to help you develop a systematic approach to solving those riddles that we call bass. Are there some lure systems that you'd like to see us break down? Let us know. Just leave a comment down below, and we'll read it, and we'll put that into our process. Okay, we want to do what's going to help you get better. Please subscribe to our channel, and also please remember to follow us on Instagram at Bass Tour Anglers Podcast. All right, systematic bass fishing. I think it's going to be a good thing. I think you're going to really like this. We're going to look forward to your input, and we're going to put about 12 episodes out over the course of the next year that are going to deal with individual lure families that are going to help you learn to create a systematic approach. Talk to you soon.
Put all of my days